His name is Sir Francis Bacon. No, no, not that Bacon. This Bacon. He was born on January 6, 1561. He attended Trinity College in Cambridge, England. In in college, Francis didn't like the philosopher Aristotle's methods to science. So so Francis moved from what he learned from Aristotle and converted those methods to what is known as the scientific method. After college, Francis went to France, then returned to England, where he was accepted into the House of Commons. There, there, he created three questions. How reliable are testimonies? What should be the result of testimonies? And lastly, how does someone decide how relevant are the laws in court cases? Sadly, Sir Francis Bacon was in trouble with King James. He banished Francis to the Tower of London, where Bacon stayed for 2 days. The reason for this was because Francis took a bribe. He was then banished from London. Now, now one of the more puzzling pieces of Francis's life was how he died. Some theories state that he died from an opium overdose. Others state he had pneumonia or bronchitis. Sir Isaac Newton. Newton was born on December 25th, 1642. Despite the fact that the doctor had told his stepmother that he would never live his first day, he made a lasting impression on the world. Before we get to that impression, there was something that you need to know. When Newton was a young boy, his parents were divorced, and he was forced to stay with his grandparents. When Newton was a bit older, he was living with his stepmother, when the stepmother told him that he would have to take care of the property himself. That resulted in Newton going to grammar school in Grantham, England. Like Francis, Newton also attended Trinity College in Cambridge, England. While attending Trinity, Newton had discovered his famous three laws of motion, which are still being used today: inertia, acceleration, and action-reaction. However, for Newton, college was going to end soon. When the Black Death hit Europe, Trinity had to shut its doors for 2 years. This actually wasn't a bad thing, because during that time, Newton discovered calculus and the law of universal gravity. Speaking of gravity, this powerful force was discovered by Newton, but not the way that everyone thought about. The most famous theory states that Newton was sitting underneath an apple tree thinking about the forces of nature when an apple fell and landed on his noggin. What really happened was that Newton realized there was a force that was preventing the moon from flying completely off track. And while maintaining its orbit around the Earth, Newton called this force gravity. And no, not the movie. The second thing that Newton discovered, something that college students dread the most: calculus. This discovery was made during the same 2 years that the university was closed because of the Black Death. What Newton found was that some other variables, like x and y, would change over time. Newton also found how cosine and sine were used to find tangent. The bad news was that Newton never made any of this public. As if this wasn't bad enough, a, a, a German mathematician by the name of Gottfried Leibniz had discovered much of the notations that were being used in calculus. Leibniz also made his discovery public. This caused a nasty dispute between the two of them. This was known as the Great Soul. For our last subject, we will talk about the diseases and the treatments that happened during this time period. The diseases that took lives during this era included ague, bubonic plague, smallpox, cancer, leprosy, and quartan fever. The symptoms for ague included chills, fever, and sweating that lasted for 2 days. The most deadly disease that took place during this time period was the bubonic plague, the Black Death. Dun dun dun. This plague was spread by rats and killed anywhere from 75 to 200 million people. Symptoms included swollen lymph glands, high fever, headache, vomiting, nausea, diarrhea, shock, and blotting and dying tissues, and then green in its extremities. The last disease that I will talk about is the quartan fever. To combat these troubling diseases, doctors would use a series of remedies like rose, dried toad, lavender, tobacco, and for the bubonic plague, a mixture of butter, onion, and garlic. In some cases, doctors would wear strange masks to cure patients and to prevent themselves from getting sick.